with Ryanair's low-fare flights to Glasgow.
Scattered heavy showers tonight with thunderstorms possible and spot flooding too. Mist and fog patches will set in again, warm and humid with lows not falling below 14 to 16 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now you're very welcome back. We'll be getting to the hurling after 9 o'clock. In the meantime, though, we're turning to a treble for Manchester City. Champions League winners in Istanbul, 1-0 win against Inter Milan. Damien Delaney is with us on the line. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Hi, Joe. I'm on the line, yes. Have you got me?
Got you now. So Man City did their thing, although it wasn't as comfortable as many people maybe had predicted in advance. Kind of an interesting first 20-25 minutes where Inter start full of energy, they're pressing very high, they're aggressive in midfield, plenty of fouls, plenty of tackles, and you think, Man City, well, that was a miscontrolled pass, and that was an errant pass, and they start to add up, and suddenly Pep Guardiola is screaming, calm down on the sideline, and it's not as comfortable as they might have thought. Yeah,
absolutely. I suppose, the Manchester City players are human, and they're at the end of a 60-plus game season, a treble on the line. They've already got 2 in the bag. There's bound to be some nerves early on, especially. But I think also in this discussion about the broader discussion about the game is there was an opposition there. We were all, me included, by the way, were expecting Man City to show up and put on a display and be epic and all take our breath away. But Inter Milan are no mugs. They're a seriously good team, and you don't get to the final without being able to set up and know how to win games. And I suppose if you're preparing for a game against Manchester City, you kind of sit down and you look and you say, okay, what are they good at? What do they want? What are the spaces they're looking for? What areas do they like to get into? And if they get into those areas, what do they like to do? And then I suppose from a starting point or jump off point as the opposition, you kind of go, okay, let's deny them that space, or at the very least limit them. You're never going to stop City getting into these areas, but if you keep letting them to certain areas of the pitch, the law of averages, law of probability, they're going to get you. And I think Inter did that. They packed the middle of the park. There was an interesting kind of little subplot with John Stones where he veered away from his usual role in terms of setting up as a traditional centre-back, and then in possession he just wanders in alongside Rodri at the base of the midfield, and City have 2 number 6s, and then the back 3 narrow off slightly, and then they get the ball into midfield. Very early on, John Stones' position was actually as a number 8. He went on the far side of Inter Milan's midfield. That as well included, he actually started as an orthodox right back, and it was Akanji and Diaz in the middle of the park and Ake at left back. Ordinarily it's kind of Akanji at right back and Ake at left back, but it was when he transitioned or inverted into that midfield role, where he was inverting into, he was on the far side of Inter's midfield. And I think part of the game plan was, by the way, I'm just stating my thoughts on it here, is Inter packed the middle of the park. They had 3 tight in midfield and 2 centre forwards. So they kind of 5 players in a 30 by 30 box. And I think if John Stones wandered in as a number 6 and City start rolling balls into him, Barella's really good at pressing. Callan Hoglu's very good at pressing. Brozovic is streetwise. They were probably maybe thinking along the lines, if we lose this, it's one pass and it's into Lautaro Martinez and they're going to get us, So they kind of switched it up a little bit, and I think he was probably expecting the back 3 to be able to get the ball into John Stones, into Gundogan, into Kevin De Bruyne on the far side of Inter's midfield. They just couldn't seem to get the ball into him, and you have to credit Inter for that. I thought they were really good in the way they set up, the way they limited Manchester City, didn't stop them at all. But that game plan that Inter set up with hinges that when the chances come along, you have to take them. You might only get 1 or 2, and they did only get 1 or 2. It's not the type of game plan where you set up and you go, you know what, we're going to get 10 chances in this game, and on the law of averages, we will get a goal or 2 out of this. The Lautaro Martinez from the mistake between Akanji and Ederson, where he could have squared it, could have pulled it back to the edge of the box. But in reality, I think he was trying to finish it himself, and it was a good save. It wasn't the best of finishes. It wasn't a horrific choice. I thought it was on. If he lifted it, he was probably anticipating the goalkeeper go down a little bit quicker, and I don't think he set it off far enough. So look, in hindsight, it wasn't a great decision, but I don't think it was horrific. For centre forward to look up to give up a chance like that, and then obviously the Lukaku header. Which, by the way, I don't think the Diaz header after it has been given anywhere near enough credit. He just almost contorts his body to somehow. I watched it back on a replay about 6 times, and I couldn't figure out whether it was luck or judgment, and I think it was a little bit of both. The way he just kind of arched himself, and he does try and get it away, and oh my God, what an incredible header, because the reflexes, the speed at which that ball was going to come back at you, and for him to make a decision and be able to adjust as quickly as what he did was seriously impressive.
Your John Stones observations are interesting, because Pep, when he was interviewed post-match, in particular about the first half, he was saying the issue for City was that Stones was the free man, but they couldn't get the ball to him. So that tallies with you, that City almost couldn't break that press and just get beyond that very bunched midfield into Stones' feet and get things moving from there.
Yeah, I didn't see that afterwards, but it was obvious after 5 minutes that that's what they were trying to do. I think he realised that Inter were a very, very good high-pressing, high-tempo midfield, and you're running the risk of turning it over. Barella's a super player, such a big fan of Barella. I have been last number of years, watching him at Inter in the Champions League, working those games, and obviously for Italy as well. I mean, he is a guy that will just get through an enormous amount of work, and I think that's what he was trying to do. But look, Manchester City came out of a group, am I right in saying, with PSG in it? They beat Bayern in the quarterfinals and they beat Real, and that's where the Champions League was won. Yeah. That's where we saw the beautiful game. Yeah. That's where they, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich came out, went toe to toe with them, and City, gave as good as they got, and they just absolutely put on a clinic in those 2 games, especially the Bayern away game. In terms of controlling a game and, being efficient in possession and everything that you do. I was really impressed with them away at Bayern. The Real Madrid game speaks for itself. Unfortunately, the final was a completely different proposition. But to be a treble champion, to be the champions of Europe, you have to know and learn how to win lots of different ways. And the one thing that we've all said about Pep Guardiola is, when they were being beaten by the likes of Monaco, by Lyon, every team that stumped them out of the Champions League in the last 4 or 5 years, they couldn't figure out a way to win. When they were posed with a certain situation. And give them the credit, they came up with a way to win. So while we, the fans, weren't as entertained as what we all wanted to be, and I think sometimes maybe we are a little bit guilty, me especially, sitting down with a bottle of beer and just saying, right, entertain me, I'm here. I think that, the professional in you always comes out and says, look, they were asked some questions and they came up with the answers. Yes, they got a little bit fortunate with the Inter misses, but I don't think we can forget either that Phil Foden has a couple of misses of his own. One really glaring one where he just, the Inter defence just seemed to part, and he almost went through 1-on-1, and it was a really weak finish. Look, overall, they deserved to win it. Throughout, they were. I don't think anyone can deny they were the best team this season in the Champions League. They were the best team in the Premier League, and obviously the FA Cup as well. They didn't fluke their way to any of this. They truly were the best team in every competition they entered, and they got the results when it mattered most. Yeah,
and like you would say, comfortably the best team. Lots of comparisons between 99 and 23 for obvious reasons, and 99 is just a different world in so many ways, but City have scored more goals than that very free scoring Manchester United side. They've conceded fewer goals. Their win percentage is about 74%. United's is 58%. Again, it was just a different world in terms of how things are done. So City, it feels like, and the final was almost the squeakiest moment. City have won everything in as undramatic a fashion as you could. Everybody just at arm's length, and they've kind of done it in what looks like fourth gear, which is not the way you're meant to win a treble.
I think so. Just to go back to your comparisons with 99, football was very, very different back then, and it's similar to what I said with Manchester City. You just had to figure out to beat what's in front of you, and Manchester United in 1999 beat everything that was in front of them. You can argue it doesn't matter how many goals scored or conceded. They found a way to win every game. There was a touch of fortune attached to that in 99 as well, when you think that they went out to 10 men at Villa Park against Arsenal, and Ryan Giggs scored that wonderful goal. That would have been pretty perilous. going down to 10 men in 1999 was probably slightly different to going down to 10 men in 2023, with the way people expose. Now, I've listened to loads of managers talk about that going down to 10 men in European football is a death sentence. Especially when you're playing against, elite teams. Obviously when you play against the lesser teams, maybe in the group stage, you can get away with it. But if you go down in a quarterfinal or a semi-final where you're playing an elite team, the way they set up, the overloads they'll create, the weak spots they're going to find in you, it is a death sentence. It's very, very hard to overcome that. But Manchester United overcame it. You can't judge them because of what Manchester City did. They're both incredible at what they did, and they both achieved it. So I would be slow to kind of go down that type of road, although I know fans will kind of pick at each other and highlight a lot of the things you're saying. But look, both teams are incredible. And your second point there, Joe, sorry, I forgot what it was.
No, that's fine. I can't remember what it was either. One glaring difference, I think, is, and it speaks to where football is at the moment, in that, sports science and preparation and tactical preparation have been so harnessed now, as opposed to 99, where there was a degree of go out there and do it. Is that when 99 happened, I think the general reaction was, oh my God, we'll never see this again. Whereas if I was to say to you now, are City more likely than not to do the treble next season, I think a lot of people would say, actually, you look at each competition individually, I think it's a pretty good chance they win the treble again. And that's the most marked difference, I think, between the two sides, is that there's just no end in sight. Once Pep is there, I think there's no end in sight for this City team on any front. Or do you see it otherwise?
I would go one step further than that, John. I'd say that there's a number of Premier League teams now that will be eyeing up a treble. When you look at the way the money that's being spent, the Premier League teams are only going to continue to get better because the money is getting more and more and more.
Premier League is the bigger ass than Europe at the moment.
I would. So that's a really tough one to call. But I would say that, maybe Liverpool will be staring down, saying that a treble is the bar, and they're capable of doing it. When you look how front loaded they are with attacking players, if they get their midfield ironed out, they're more than capable of winning a Premier League, a Champions League, and an FA Cup. I think a quadruple should be what we're talking about now. That's the one that's never been done before, and I think that's what Manchester City will be setting their sights on, winning all 4 trophies. By virtue of the fact that the Premier League has just got so much money in it, and so many good teams and so many good coaches. When you look at the likes of Villa and Wolves, the level of coaches that they have in Emery and Lopetegui, I mean, these guys are like seasoned European Cup winning or Europa League winning teams who have managed Spain, Real Madrid. They're like serious coaches, and that's some way down the Premier League. So I think that a number of Premier League teams will be eyeing up the treble, and I think it's going to become more and more likely, to be honest with you, because squads are going to get more and more deep insofar as the 25 you're allowed to register. You'll have 25 season internationals as opposed to 12 or 13 season internationals, a few lads kind of on the way up or on the way down, and then maybe bookended with a few young fellas. I mean, Manchester City has got 25. I know they have a few kids in there as well, but I already saw them linked today with Garvidal, the centre-back out of Germany. What an incredible sign that would be as a centre-back to come in. So they're only going to get better and better and better. Liverpool, Newcastle, I'm not saying Newcastle are going to win a treble, but it's somewhere down the line in a number of years. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. I don't know if the Qatari thing is going to go through with Manchester United. There's rumours today that it's all but done. They're going to be ironing out all their issues, and they're going to be rebuilding. So, not to mention Arsenal with the season that they had, and obviously Chelsea. So, I think the quadruple could be the new treble, Joe. That's fair.
I dare say you could be right. And that is a grim state of affairs for those of us who grew up and loved European football as being the pinnacle.
Yeah, look, obviously I'm not writing off the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, but it's going to get harder and harder for those guys to compete with the Premier League money. It's just going to keep stretching and stretching with the amount of state money, oil money that's involved in the Premier League. Anytime a player comes on the market, it's more invariably going to be a Premier League team that's going to get them. by and large. I'm not saying that Real Madrid won't get their fair share of players, but I just think that, the young talent, the money that's going to be on offer, the transfer fees that the Premier League teams can pay, it just looks like it's going that way, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, Haaland's a good example of that. I think 15 years ago, there's no question he goes to Madrid or Barcelona.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And the way he was managed, his career has been stage managed, and you look at, I know Harry Kane is just talking him going to Real Madrid and stuff like that, but and then your other point of why City could, maintain their dominance is if Pep stays. But I think they've put in place the structures that are going to underpin that football club with the academy, the training group. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that.
I was going to ask you about Pep. One, well, let's come to what happens when he leaves. Secondly, let's talk firstly his standing in the game now. I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Is his third Champions League, first without Messi, which was often a stick to beat him with. This is his second treble, 5 and 6 in the Premier League. I think it's 33 trophies in his 15 years, and then that's not really to kind of, and I don't know how you measure his influence in the game, but he's the most influential coach in my lifetime. The whole world is imitating what he's done, which is extraordinary, and he still comes up with things which surprise people, and we make sense of them in retrospect, but nobody is saying they should go 3 at the back, put a 4 in midfield, Haaland, and then the 2 boys out wide. That's the solution, but Pep dreams these things up and is just probably at genius level. His standing in the game, of all the coaches you've seen in your lifetime, I'm not going to ask you to go back to Cruyff for people that you mightn't remember as well, but Pep's stature in the game in the midst of Ferguson's and others.
Yeah, I think in terms of influence on the game, he's the greatest that I've seen. Again, I wasn't around, for the Dutch team in the 70s, where they were like, you see those old videos of them ultra high pressing and stuff like that. Pep is kind of taking these ideas and adding his own little bits to it. You will look back in the 70s, there were teams doing an awful lot of what Pep was doing. I was reading an article before, there were teams previously that had midfield players defenders step into midfield. But obviously he's putting his own spin on it, and he's putting his own stamp on it, and he's perfecting it in his way. And I think the fluidity that which City are being able to flip between 2 formations is the most impressive thing. Because I've played in lots of teams where managers will say, like, in possession we're going to do this, and out of possession we're going to do that, and invariably ends up being a mess, because a lot of players will kind of go, well, I thought that we kind of still had possession, or the ball was in flux, and I thought we were going to get it, so I didn't drop back in here. Yeah. Or invariably they can't recover quick enough, because on the turnover the opposition goes straight for the jugular, and you kind of get caught out of position a little bit. But the fluidity and ease that they're doing it with, and not just against like mid-table Premier League teams, that they did it against Real Madrid. The attention to detail, the attention of the players he must have to listen to him, to buy into what he's saying, and to execute it, just shows what an incredible manager he is. Because it's one thing having these ideas, it's another thing getting the players to believe and do what you want to do and execute it to the level that you want to execute it to. Yes, he spent a lot of money. Yes, there's a couple of dark clouds hanging over him, from the 115 charges, and obviously the referee incident in Spain. Maybe there will be little asterisks that people may or may not put next to his name. But from a footballing point of view, with what he assembled, regardless of how he assembled it, it's pretty impressive, and my admiration for him and what he's done is outrageous. I do think they're probably going to get hit hard because of this 115 charges next year, City. I don't think they'll get anything retrospective, but I think there'll probably be some sort of a points deduction in the very near future for them. That'll be large enough for everyone to say, okay, they were taught a lesson, but not large enough for them not to qualify for the Champions League. That would be my guess, but that is just like a wild guess.
Which again, we welcome in the media, by all means. Whatever you want to do, just throw it out there with the bandit. It's kind of interesting because he has said if they're found guilty, he's leaving. I won't be your friend tomorrow was his very dramatic way of putting it. So if they are hit with something, whether he leaves on principle will be interesting to see. So you said they're set up to succeed, even if he was to depart. For all the reasons we've just discussed, and a whole other host of them, even just his handling of these egos, Cancelo, I don't like the cut of your jib, you're bombed out of here. Calvin Phillips, you're a little bit overweight, you're basically not going to play for me this season. And of course he's able to afford to spend 50 million on this guy and then not play him, but still if you look, I counterpoint our PSG, who just make a mess of this whole thing, and it's the small decisions he makes and how he manages this group, which is kind of uber impressive that he keeps them on track. I think the second he walks out the door, Man City revert a little bit to reality.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility, but I think they've definitely put the infrastructure in place that if he did walk out the door, they have a chance of keeping the ship moving. When you contrast that back to when Ferguson walked out in 2013 and the squad that was left over and the club in the shape that it was in, David Moyes was on hiding to nothing really. When I know that squad and that team won the Premier League. I know Man United fans will be quick to point that out, but you could just tell that Ferguson ran that place with an iron fist, and as soon as he went, everything seemed to go with him. I think with City and the backroom team, I mean, did you see how many of them were on the pitch after the game when they were forming the Guard of Honour? I mean, they must have had 2 or 3 buses worth of staff coming there. But I just think in the middle management, there's a clear objective, a clear direction that the football club is going in. Their academy's in a really good shape in terms of they've scalped up a lot of young talent from around the world. The age profile of the team is very, very good. And regardless of what we say about City and their spending, their net spend is seriously impressive. I have my notes with me. They're not quite with me right now. They're in another room, which is very professional of me. But their net spend is pretty good. They haven't just gone and no, at the start they did. And I think to bridge the gap, that's probably how they got hit with all these charges. Yeah. Because, to go from where they were to where they are, they had to spend a lot of money. You think of Claudio Bravo and Ederson, those types of situations. They were on a track to go somewhere. They didn't want to wait, so they just said, you know what, we'll break the rules and we'll deal with or potentially break the rules, or allegedly break the rules, and then we could have picked up the pieces up. But now when you look at where they are, the age profile is good. They're moving the likes of Sterling on. Kyle Walker, you wouldn't be surprised they moved him on now, and they'd get a decent sum of money for him. If Julian Alvarez wanted to move on because he wasn't getting enough first team football, he's probably 5 or 6x his fee that he probably came in for. World Cup winner, proven that when he comes on and score goals. So I think they're in a good place. They're well run, and obviously that comes from the ownership. They've put the right people in the right places to recruit players. They know when to move a player on. They don't hang on to them for a year too long, and then all of a sudden, the player is not really contributing. They've hung on to them for memory's sake. So I think they're in a good spot. They really are. Obviously, the manager that comes in after him will obviously have a huge job to do, but the club's in a good place.
At the risk of this sounding like a very childish question, I was going to ask you who your favourite City player is, because it's funny when you go through them, like Ederson and his distribution, Diaz, the way Akanji's come in, the role that Stones is playing. Kyle Walker's not able to play that role according to Pep. Then again, what Walker did against Vinicius. Then you got De Bruyne, who's De Bruyne. Then you got Rodri, who's holding it all together. Then you got Bernardo Silva, who's off the charts lately and does so much great work without the ball as well. Then you got Gundogan, who's their main man for several months now. You got Grealish, he's been outstanding. There's that bloke called De Bruyne, he's kind of good. And then there's a guy called Haaland. It's like you can kind of, whoever's the flavour of the week, you can kind of build into like almost their most important guy. Like they're kind of freakishly good.
Yeah, I'll give you my favourite City player because I know straight away who it is. But the Gundogan situation is something that I just want to touch on as well. A treble winner. And by the way, what a contribution to winning a treble. And you wouldn't be surprised if they let him walk out the door. And that's what I mean about the ruthlessness of going, well, you know what, we can get better than him, or not only can we get better than him, but we're going to get someone that's going to give us 5 or 6 years. Gundogan, we can re-sign him and we might get another year out of him, but look, we're going to have to solve that problem eventually. But you know what, we're just going to cut our losses, not recoup because he's going on a free, but recoup the wages, and we're going to just sign someone that's and settle us down for the next 5 or 6 years, like Real Madrid did with Camavinga and Tchouaméni and Casemiro. They don't hang on to players, or they won't hang on to players. If they do, then obviously they can't get better than him. But you would imagine that they're looking, for a long-term replacement for him. And if they can get him now, they'll let him walk out the door. But my favourite City player is without doubt, but Rodri. I mean, we did a thing last week for a TV channel, and we were doing a Premier League game, and someone asked me, like, who's the most underrated player? And my answer was Rodri. He's the most rated player that I've seen. He is incredible. His reading of the game very, very rarely goes to ground. His interception is outrageous. His filling of passing lanes, his versatility in terms of, like, can score goals, can step in, can be a handful. The stature of the guy, he's 6'4", he can move. He has got the lot. And then obviously his passing is so crisp, so beautiful. And he's a perfect link man, you know, to get into and keep it moving. Because I always look at, you know, players like Rodri playing in the position that their manager played in. I always imagine it's quite difficult for someone like Rodri to play in that number 6 position when Pep pretty much, you know, was the main man for so long, because he sits down and tells you something. You're like, oh, well, hang on a second. You're trying to argue with him, but that's just a side note. But I always think that's kind of a messy one, you know, for players. But he is as good as you're going to see. And again, his age profile, his durability, which is obviously something that a lot of people look at, doesn't miss many games, seems battle hardened, and seems to be good for another good chunk of seasons. I don't know how many, but he doesn't look like he's going to slow up his age profile and his fitness levels. City are good in that area of the pitch, and obviously they signed Calvin Phillips because they were kind of worried about the load they were going to put on him. Yeah. As it turns out, he was able to handle that load. And he's going to be a seriously good player for them moving forward.
So Rodri's your favourite player? What a depressing answer.
It's one I enjoy watching the most.
What a depressing answer. I actually feel sorry for you.
It sums me up, Joe.
No, I hear you. We are pretty much out of time. That was great. Thank you very much. I'm sure you got wedge practice to get back to, and your regimen has been interrupted.
You actually got far off it, Joe. Yeah,
I've no doubt. The divots in your back garden. Thanks a mil. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks, man.
Cheers. Damien Delaney giving us his thoughts on Manchester City's treble. John Brewin's going to be with us very shortly as well to chat about the TV coverage, which came up for much discussion on Saturday night as well. We do have a competition for you. It's with thanks to Perform Nutrition. So every day this week we're giving away €150 Perform Nutrition voucher, as well as the grand prize on Friday of 1 year's supply of Perform products. Perform Nutrition provides 100% Irish high-value sports and health nutrition products to consumers and athletes in Ireland and abroad. To enter, just identify tonight's mystery voice. Not so sure Tom Cannon is going to come back and play for Ireland.
He's going to come here to Little Paddyland.
Your name and answer. What was he talking about there? Venables. Oh my God. The good times. Your name and answer, please, to 53106. Perform Nutrition, 100% Irish sports nutrition products, make form permanent. Short break, more Champions League talk on the way.
Off the ball on News Talk. News Talk Breakfast.
While maybe when you're filling out a form or ticking a box, the reason put down might, in the abstract, seem
no second